Good morning, everyone, and we are starting our 12 Powers series today, which I'm very excited. We talk all the time in spiritual circles. We'd love to talk about that divine spark within us, right? How God is all things, and that means each of us, and the divine is within us. I prayed to the Spirit within me this morning. Spirit guided me. And we talk about it a lot, but talking is not enough. We actually need a method to grow our spiritual capacities so that our spiritual nature is active and creative through our human nature, right? We're calling forth the divine to work through us, for us, as us. And that's how we can know the truth, that God is all things, and that means us, and how we live the truth. So we start with our Unity 5 principles, right? This is where we start. And then we move on to what Charles Fillmore ended up calling the 12 powers. And the 12 powers help us to experience soul growth. Now, if you think about just being on the other side where everything's just spirit and source, everything on that side is already enlightened. But our soul chooses to come through, to have a human body, to create a human experience, because through our experiences, our soul learns to know itself at a deeper level. And this can look like how we get better and better at acting in faith. And acting in faith over something small, at first it may be a big challenge, but then we did it and we had a good experience and we learned something. So then we go deeper into knowing who we are by having a little something harder come up in our life. And so that's how we keep knowing ourselves at a deeper level, at the soul level. We're unlocking new abilities is what we're doing. We're unlocking new abilities. So today I'm going to talk about faith and what gets in the way and how can we amplify our faith. So I'm going to start with a story. I was about 20 years old, maybe 21, and I had taken my grandma to the doctor. And she had to go to the doctor for a lot of things. But we were sitting in the room, the exam room, and a nurse comes in and says, I think that we might need to draw blood. And so she said, I'll be right back. So she walked out. Now, nobody likes giving blood, but my grandma really hated it because the veins in her arm were collapsed. One time when she was in the hospital, they had to put her IV through her ankle, okay? So I sat there, my early 20-year-old self, doing my typical prayer of petition, my prayer of begging. Okay, quietly, please don't let them have to draw blood. Please don't let them have to draw blood. Please don't let them have to draw blood. A few minutes later, the nurse came back in and she says, it turns out we have all the information we need from your previous blood draw, so we will not have to draw blood today. Now, there are many people who might say, thank you, God, for answering my prayers. You always hear my prayers. And some people who might say something even like, God always answers my prayers. God always hears me. But I was shocked. I was shocked because it seemed like I didn't get my prayers answered, right? So that was a shocker to me. Now, psychologically, there are many reasons, like going back into childhood, where we might have difficulty having faith in ourselves, which is actually a requirement to having faith in God. We actually have to have faith in ourselves, or we won't listen to guidance because we won't trust ourselves. Okay, but if we have difficulty having faith in ourselves, that does make it hard to have faith in others and then faith in God. So if we're having trouble having faith in the divine and having faith in ourselves, we may actually have our hope and our optimism compromised then as we are living our lives. So I'm going to first of all talk about, what is it that keeps us from having faith in spirit within us? And that is our belief that we are separate from our Creator. Then you could add other things on top of it, but this is the core reason that we will have trouble having faith in God and faith in ourselves. We feel separate from our Creator. And so I know for myself how this used to look, especially when I first started at Unity, like 25 years ago. I would get up every day and I'd have all my affirmations. God is the source of my supply. God is all things. And I would say these things, right? 5-10 minutes in the morning. But then I had to start my day. And then it felt like, oh, this is really hard. This isn't fair. I hate, things just never seem to work out. I don't have enough money. Our economy will never recover. Something is not going to go right. I know it's coming, right? all the bad things. And then what happens is we end up moving out of alignment. We move out of alignment. And when we move out of alignment, we're no longer aligned with our focus on spirit. We're focusing then on the things that upset us or scare us. Now, the disciple in the 12 powers, there's a disciple for each of the powers. And the disciple for faith is Peter. And so, you've all heard the story of Jesus walking on the water, right? It's a very popular story. But it starts off with, actually, it's kind of a secondary story to the whole fishes and loaves adventure. And so after the fishes and loaves, Jesus says to his disciples, you go ahead, take this boat, go across the Sea of Galilee. I will catch up with you later. So the disciples are out there on the sea, and it's night when things are more scary, in the dark. And a terrible storm comes upon them. And so they're terrified. And back on shore, their teacher actually has awareness of their fear. And so you know what he does? He goes walking across the water. So now the disciples are on their boat. And one of them says, that is spirit? And one of them says, that is our teacher. And so Peter says, teacher, call to me and I will walk across the water and meet you. And so Jesus did that. Put out his hands. Peter climbs over the boat, walks out across the water, but then he's not there yet, but he looks down and the water's deep and dark. There are a lot of waves. There's a storm. He starts to sink. Luckily, he had the insight to yell out, teacher, help me. Jesus reached out his hand and plucked him right out of the water. Now, what happened was something that a lot of us do. In fact, if you're familiar with the old Roadrunner cartoons, Wile E. Coyote did this all the time. He would focus on his desire by chasing Roadrunner out over a cliff, but Roadrunner would make it over to the other side of the big, vast, empty. Wile E. Coyote would get halfway across and then look down, and it was only when he looked down that he would fall. All right? So, Peter started off by looking at the focus of his desire. He wanted to walk across that water and meet his teacher. So he gets halfway out there, but then he started focusing on what scared him. He started focusing on the storm and maybe even the impossibility of walking on water. Okay, sometimes we focus on the impossibilities, and so we lose our focus of our desire. We move out of alignment ourselves when we are focusing on the things that upset us or scare us. We focus on the things we don't like. We focus on the impossibilities. It takes our focus then off of what we desire. Now, Sharon Connors, she's a Unity minister. She wrote this book, Adventures in Resilience, Ignite the 12 Powers in You and Create a Radiant Life. This is an amazing book. It's amazing. She's a great writer. But she says this about the power of faith. Faith is the power of yes. It is the power of yes. We say yes all day long, but sometimes we say yes to our fears. We don't always say yes to life with a capital L. We say yes to our fears. And our yeses create our experiences, right? Whatever we're yesing the most is what's creating our experience. I had got to have, this is a good experience that I had because I've used it as a story like 100 times. But I had taken somebody shopping and then out to lunch. And I thought it was, a really nice way to spend the afternoon. But I get her home and her friend calls, and what I hear her say is like, oh yeah, well, we went shopping, but all the salespeople were so rude. And the food at the restaurant, it was slow, it was cold, the waitress was so rude. And I remember thinking, what trip was she on? Because I thought it was a lovely afternoon, right? But she would say yes to life being unfair or hard or difficult, or yes to the food being cold, yes to let's have something to complain about, right? That was her milieu. So if we're saying life is hard over and over again, we're saying yes to that fear. We're saying yes to separation. We're saying yes to the separation. So if we're looking at life and we're focusing on how hard it feels, how scary it seems, how unfair it seems to be, we're saying yes, we have faith in the storm. Right? As soon as Peter shifted his focus to the storm, he started sinking again. So when we are saying yes to all of that hard stuff, we also start sinking. And it's why it feels so bad. Nobody wants to drown in all the negativity that can surround us. But that's what it feels like is happening. Okay? Now, I'm not saying ignore everything that's going on, not at all, but in Unity, we have a process that's called the denials and the affirmations. So if something scary comes up or very unpleasant, we just okay, stop right there. This may be a thing going on right now, but you do not get to control how I show up to my life. Right? That's all that a denial is in the Unity, consciousness. You do not get to have control over how I show up to my life. I can show up in faith whenever I want to, and nobody can change that. Right? So what we can do when life is stormy, we can look around and observe the conditions. Always observe the conditions during a storm, because you want to get your umbrella. Right? You want to get your umbrella. You don't want to bike anywhere. You want to take your car. Observe the conditions of life. Observe the storm. But then we do an affirmation. Right? Okay, there's a storm right now, but I have an umbrella. It's fine. Getting wet is not going to make me melt away. Umbrellas are good. Right? There is something greater at work in the world right now. Even though there are these conditions, there is something greater at work in the world right now. And I may not know what the future holds for me, but I do know that the divine, the power that creates worlds, is at work through me, just like everybody else. And so I say yes to that power. I say yes to the power working through me. I'll listen. I'll act. And I will see God in every person. I will see it as the everywhere present force that it is, because it is. It is an everywhere present force, meaning solutions can come from surprising places. Meaning that even if I don't like a situation, there's somebody who knows about the situation and has more knowledge, and they know better things to even do, even better things to do. My mom used to work for the unemployment office, and our neighbor came in one day to collect unemployment. My mom did not like our neighbor, and he put sugar in my grandma's car. Right? They were just awful people. So my mom, very much in faith, she looks at this person and she knows she's not the person to work with him. She's going to step away. So she tells her boss, I cannot work with him. He's my neighbor who I hate. So I don't know if she said that, but her boss comes in and found way more reasons to not get this guy his unemployment than my mom ever could have. Karma said hello and you're welcome, and that guy walked out of there, okay? Somebody knew way more than my mom about something and did a much finer job at giving out that information, right? So there are people who know more than us, who can do more things, which is why Fred Rogers says, if you don't know what to do, help the helpers. Help the helpers. So that's what we can do when we don't know what to do. I will hold the light and do what I can do. Whatever I can do, that's what I will do, and I will hold the light. This is our sacred assignment right now on this planet, because we're here. We're here. So this moment in time is our sacred assignment. So no matter what, I will listen and act in faith. I will call forth as much light as I'm able. Right? So that's what we do when we start getting in our own way with our faith. We see the activity of God is everywhere present. That power that is working through each of us, it wants to experience new things. That power wants to experience new things. It wants to unlock new abilities. It wants to up-level our lives. Right? In the old days, they used to call that expanding your territory. Right now, my kids taught me, you call it up-leveling your life. Right? Or leveling up. They're like, don't say up-level, Mom. Say level up. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Whatever. Right? But that's what we're doing. Okay? We're not here to stay in fear and be afraid to make a move and be afraid to move out of our comfort zone. That is actually the most boring thing about any person, being afraid to move forward, right? Wanting to stay where everything's familiar, where there's a guarantee. That is the most boring part of any of us. That's boring. The soul is not here for boring, right? The soul is here to help us get more interesting in our lives. Faith is visionary. Faith is visionary because this is where we move out of all the familiar territory and we have to listen and act in faith to gain a new experience. And this is what the soul wants, right? So faith moves us into the most interesting version of ourselves in that moment, right? Right? So the thing that keeps us from having faith is simply feeling like we're separate from God within us. So how do we amplify our faith? Right? We can all do this. This is good. We amplify our faith by remembering our sacred identity. Remembering our sacred identity. Remembering our sacred identity is the key to everything. It's the key to everything. That's right here on this card. You can leave it in your car. God is all things. We are each an expression of God. We are always a divine being having a human experience. Always, always, always. We can forget and we can make some ridiculous choices in our lives, but it does not change our divine origin. Then we can pay attention to our inner conversations. This teaches us to gain awareness. Okay, yeah, I said my affirmations this morning, but now am I going out into the world limiting what God can do through me, for me, as me? Am I limiting by saying, oh, this is stupid, or I hate this, or this is all wrong, and because it's all wrong, I can never be happy? Is that what I'm doing instead? So paying attention to our inner conversations gives us a lot of awareness. Okay, then we then we surrender our fears. We surrender our fears. I let go of worry. I let go of my doubts. I'm going to stop giving them power over me. I'm going to turn it over to Spirit. Spirit wants to work through me to open up my greater good. I actually had to sit down and list out my fears. Like, what am I going through the day? Where am I going through the day and forgetting to ask for help? Right? So it's what we're forgetting to ask for help on. Then we spend time in prayer. Because now that we're clear on what we need to surrender, now we know what to ask for, right? So prayer is part of our principles, affirmation, affirmative prayer, or meditation. They help us to align with the divine within. And I think we all have our way of doing things and we feel the alignment happen, all right? But really, we want to pray like a maniac, okay? I'm going to say that. We want to pray like a maniac. Like we do it all through the day. All through the day. We got to pray. Ask the divine. Okay, remember that list of things I want to surrender? Having a little trouble here. So I hand it over to you, God. I hand it over. I just hand it over, right? And then ask. So what is the next thing that I can do? This thing's going on. What's the next thing that I can do? And then listen and act. Listen and act, listen and act. We do not always ask for help. We don't. And my kids have taught me this more than anything else in the whole world. I'll be stomping around the house. And now that we're all living in a big house together, like I get to hear about it more often. It's like I'm stomping around, I'm sighing. Mom, what's wrong? Oh, nothing. I just had to do this thing and that thing, and then this thing and that thing. I had to wash someone else's fork. It's like, Mom, you could have asked for help. Like, you're right, kids. You're right. We do not always remember to ask. We do not. then this is the big one right here. Remember that you are the blessing. You are the blessing. You are the reason that Source is expanding itself into these deeper, more wonderful experiences. Our soul is expanding through our human experience. Because of you, your soul has a way to know itself at a deeper level and expand itself into your life, which then ends up trickling into the life of other people around us. And that's really how we change heaven on earth, or create heaven on earth. We can't go to another section of the planet, point our finger and demand something change so that we can all be happy. We start here. We're doing our soul's work. We're not doing somebody else's soul's work. We're doing our soul's work. So here's our call to action for this week. We'll start with our affirmation. This is a great one. Let's say it together 3 times. Faith paves the way and blesses my day. Faith paves the way and blesses my day. Faith paves the way and blesses my day. Our soul's desire is to grow and expand its light through our humanity. It wants us to experience greater good, right? The soul wants us to experience greater good because that's expansion, right? It means it gets to grow, but it serves the whole package, right? It's good for the whole package. So if we're in fear, that's restriction. The soul's not growing through that experience. It's bored. It's sitting there bored, right? But when we choose faith over fear, that's expansion. So now the soul gets to light up a little more as it's working through us, right? If we choose doubt, if we're in doubt and we just want to hang on to that doubt, that's restriction. And that's boring for the soul. Instead, when we choose curiosity over doubt, this is expansion. And this is exciting for the soul. Being in judgment, right? And looking around and deciding, I'm just going to tell everybody how wrong they are and they need to do it my way. Being in judgment is restrictive and it's boring. Instead, choosing compassion over judgment, that is expansive. That opens up a whole new level of living for us. So it's through this expansion that we are calling forth a greater light. We call forth more ideas, interesting things. We get inspired, and pretty soon we find ourselves having solutions right there. There's solutions right there for us. We become the most interesting version of ourselves, right? We get to proudly live as our authentic self. It was interesting that the daily word affirmation today was about authenticity. And authenticity, we have to live in faith to be our authentic self. Because why wouldn't someone choose to be authentic? They're afraid they can't pull it off. They're afraid of what other people might say. They're I know for myself, I was afraid somebody would make fun of me. Tell me, who do you think you are? Are you kidding? Right? To be authentic, we have to actually live in faith. We got to have faith. So here's our invitation for this week, right? We'll have 7 days of getting to analyze, and look, have awareness of how we're showing up. So we can ask ourselves, right? Am I asking for help while this is going on? Am I asking for guidance? Or do I just feel like throwing in the towel, right? Or am I surrendering my fears, right? Or am I holding them close and using them as reasons, for something? Usually I know when I look at my fears, it's usually a good excuse to not do something, right? So are we surrendering our fears? Are we praying like a maniac? Are we praying like a maniac? There is that within us, and it wants more for us than we could possibly imagine, because it adds to its own experience too, right? when it is having a great experience, we for sure are having a great experience. And it can do more for us than we could ever imagine. This is why faith is visionary. When we listen and act in faith, we are so often guided down a path that we had no idea that was what we should be doing. And then something so wonderful unfolds from this really, odd piece of guidance that we got, but we listened, we acted, and something totally surprising happened. This is why faith is visionary, and it's exciting. It can do more for us than we can ever imagine. That's why we want to pray like a maniac. That's why we want to hand it all over, right? Source wants to create heaven on earth, because that is harmony. That is harmony between our hearts and our thoughts, our hearts and the divine, our thoughts and the divine. This is what creating heaven on earth is. Harmony. Harmony. It wants to create heaven on earth, so it will guide our lives. Because we are each, as we listen and act in faith, we are pulling in a little bit of heaven on earth right where we are, and we're anchoring it in our physical life. We're anchoring it in right here. And it may seem like a small amount, but when you have everybody doing this, when you have there's a tipping point. So we don't even need the whole planet to do it. We just need to get to a tipping point, right? Listening and acting in faith. We listen and act in faith. Moment by moment, we are accomplishing greater things. We are expanding our territory. We're saying yes to life when we listen and act in faith. We are saying yes to that force at work through us, for us, as us. And that's how we are creating heaven on earth. So until next time, thank you. Until next time, remember that you're designed to be doing all of this. It is in your divine DNA. It's in there. It is in there. You are a one-time, one-of-a-kind cosmic event. And everything you do, you are blessed. And so it is. So it is. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we are now going to go into our